Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest Minty Minutes, and we are here for episode number 8 of the podcast, which is just kind of wild that we're already at number 8, and I'm just going to basically keep saying that until we reach the year, and then I'm going to stop saying that. But anyway, we're here for episode number 8, and like I say for most episodes, this actually is going to be a fairly short one, because it's been a bit of a month, just to say the least. June was a bit of a month. In a lot of ways, and I didn't really get around to watching as many things as I wanted to. Definitely didn't go to the theaters to watch as much stuff as I wanted to, but also at the same time, like, there wasn't really as many things out that I kind of wanted to see either. There were a few things, but not really. July is going to be a lot better, a lot different. I'm not going to say better, but a lot different, because there is a lot of things coming out in July that I do want to see, and it is also my birthday month, and I try to see more movies during my birthday month anyway, just because I like the movies. So today's episode is going to be kind of a shorter one for the most part. I only technically have 3 things to talk about, and the third thing is just kind of a funny thing just to talk about, just because I feel like mentioning it and bringing it up. But yeah, so let's just get into it, shall we? And like the main meat of the episode here today is going to be about Inside Out 2. So I'm a massive fan of Pixar and of animated movies and Disney in general, as you probably have already known from the rest of the content on the channel. I love Pixar stuff, and actually I originally did a Pixar tier list on my stream when I was streaming on Twitch a couple years ago. I done a Pixar ranking tier list, and that was a pretty fun stream to do that in general. And I just love Pixar, so I might actually do it again as just actually a video to upload at some point. But anyway, I love Pixar. Inside Out is arguably my favorite Pixar movie of all of them. It's like right up there, kind of tied with like Incredibles, Ratatouille, and Coco. But I love the first Inside Out, like so much so that the first movie kind of is what got me on the path to like studying psychology and going down this pathway of like trying to become a therapist or a counselor, whatever you want to call them, basically same thing, and like going to college for that stuff as well. So like the first movie kind of is the reason why I started going down that whole journey, that pathway, education wise, and I just love it. I love the depiction in the first movie of, in a sense, like a nuanced perspective on depression, even though it might not be like clinical depression, but just on depression in general, and the fact that, you know, you can't have complete joy in your life, or else you basically become delirious, and that's also not good either. And that sadness leads to empathy, and that empathy is what makes us human, and that we need sadness in our lives. We need all of our emotions in our lives to basically help us be human and to grow. So when they actually finally announced Inside Out 2, which I knew that was going to happen, like Inside Out 2 had been like announced like years ago, and it had just been in the works, obviously, just because it takes a long time to make animated movies. It takes a long time to make movies in general, just because of movies. But they announced Inside Out 2 years ago at this point. And I remember I was really excited about it. I was like, I wonder what they're going to do with that. With the idea, like, okay, they're going to definitely add new emotions, because like they kind of have to do that. And they kind of tease at the beginning of the first movie. I just watched the first movie again the other day. But they kind of tease at the end of the first movie of like, oh man, puberty, what's that? And we'll worry about that later. And it's like, okay, that makes perfect sense to have that be the crux of the new movie, is Riley, the main character, going through puberty. That would make sense, because puberty, adolescence, is a massive time in all of human life, and it is where your entire body completely changes. And I'm not going to go down the whole psychological or biological teaching lesson here, but adolescence and puberty are a major turning point in human development. Just in general, and it was really cool actually learning about that in college as well. And they're like, oh wow, this is a lot of stuff that happens in one time. And it's true, a lot of stuff happens in one time. And one of the main things they showed off in this movie was new emotions, and you get new emotions and what those emotions are and how complex they are. And for this movie, I loved all the new emotions they added, and I kind of wish we got a little bit more of a couple of them, but I think overall they were really good. So having envy in there makes perfect sense, because when you become a teenager, you start self-doubting. You start like doubting yourself, and you're like, oh man, I wish I could be like them, or whatever. Ennui is one of my favorite emotions just in general, just because for the longest time, for no real reason, I've just been obsessed with the word ennui, and I really just love the word ennui. And I love that they made that an emotion in this movie, and it's just boredom. And like that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Shyness, I think is what it is, or embarrassment. Embarrassment being this like big pink like character with like a sweatshirt, hilarious. Love that. And then the main one. Oh, also technically nostalgia's in the movie too, but we only see her a little bit. But I love the whole idea of nostalgia in the movie. That's just funny. But anyway, and then the main one. Then we have Maya Hawke coming in from Stranger Things, daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke. Maya Hawke. She's been in Stranger Things. She's been in other things as well. She's great. I love Maya Hawke. She's awesome. Comes in as Anxiety, and already that just kind of sent me to the moon a bit, because I'll get into this a little bit later, so I'll talk about this a little bit. I'm going to talk about the movie now. Anxiety was portrayed perfectly in this movie, and I love everything about what they were saying with this character and how the antagonist of the movie, because I love Inside Out for not having villains. They have antagonists, and that's like a media literacy thing that like I think people kind of get mixed up on a little bit, but there is a difference between a villain and an antagonist. Pretty much every villain is an antagonist, but not every antagonist is a villain. It's one of those like square rectangle things. Basically, an antagonist is just anyone who opposes the protagonist. And the protagonist is the person who we're following in the story. They don't have to be a hero, it's just the person we're following. So the person we're technically following in the story is technically Joy. She's like the main one we're following. So Anxiety is the antagonist to that. But they're not a villain. They're just a natural occurrence. And in the movie, they basically explain what anxiety is, and that just kind of goes from there. And I love the explanation of it because it's true. Where anxiety compares itself to fear, where fear is what protects you from what you can see. Anxiety is what protects you from what you can't see, which is true. That's what anxiety does. Anxiety is what is inside of you that protects you from the possibilities of things to happen, which is what protects you. And the problem with anxiety, in general, in the actual general psychological terms, is that if your anxiety gets too high and is too active, you start becoming afraid of everything. And you start planning irrationally for everything, which is why you get chronic anxiety, and you get anxiety disorders, and you get social anxieties, and all that stuff, and it leads to depression as well. It leads to a loss of self, which is a really cool thing because this movie deals with that too. And not to get into spoilers, so I'm trying not to get into spoilers here because this movie is still very recent, very recently out. It's only been out for, at the time of this recording, 3 weeks, so that's pretty impressive. But this movie does a lot of things that just really, really hit me deep inside because of everything I've studied, everything I've been through in my life, and all that. And it's Inside Out. It's just one of those great movies. And the reason why I connected with it a lot is a couple years ago, at this point, I think like 6 years ago. Yeah, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. I started going to therapy. Wow, that's actually been a long ass time. I started going to therapy, and I've gone through 2 different therapists, technically 3 different therapists, but 2 different therapists at this point, just because of insurance stuff or whatever. And in that time, I basically come to terms with the fact that I have chronic depression, I have chronic anxiety, and that's something I kind of feel like I always knew, but it's something that, you know, being told that is a really good sign. Be like, okay, cool, now I actually know what's wrong with me. Now I can try and deal with this. So I have depression, I have anxiety. I take medication for the depression. The anxiety I still try to work on, and I'm still working on in general. So seeing it portrayed in this movie, and having it portrayed in such a respectable and accurate way makes a lot of sense, and it just really hits me. Especially at a part in the end of the movie, which I will not say until you see the movie, but it is a beautiful, beautiful scene, kind of showing the inner workings of what happens during a certain situation, and how that is just a perfect visual representation of this completely abstract idea, which is something that the first movie and now second movie have done so well, and that's give physical visualizations of these very abstract concepts, which is why like psychologists and therapists and like all the people in the mental health field love these movies so much, because they're able to give a visual representation to an audience, like not even to like younger audiences, but just to audiences in general, and you can like connect with that. So I really connect with this movie, and I really love this movie. But the bigger thing about it, the bigger, like, wider picture thing about this movie that I actually really want to talk about, kind of piggybacking off of last month's episode about box office numbers, which is another thing I really love, as you all have come to realize at this point. I really love box office numbers. Kind of one of those things that, like, not hyper focuses, but like one of those like special interest things when it comes to movies that I really love to see and really love to look at and like study. The box office performance of this movie is wild. Absolutely wild. So I don't really know what the budget is of this movie. Let me look that up real quick. So the budget, wow, okay. So the budget supposedly for this movie was like $175 million to $200, which is wild to think about for a movie, especially an animated movie. But that's just how Disney rolls at this point. They just give a lot of money to movies. So the budget, let's just go with $200 million as the budget for this movie. $200 million for a budget. To make it profitable, the movie would have to make at least double, if not 2.5 times its budget. So let's just go with double, just to be safe for the math here. So for double its budget, it would have to make $400 million. Worldwide is fine, but have to make $400 million in total to be profitable. If we go 1.5 or 2.5, it would have to make $500 million to be profitable. So it did that its opening weekend. It did that its opening weekend, because its opening weekend, when it came out on June 13th, or the weekend of June 14th, it basically made domestically $154 million, which was like the fourth highest grossing anime movie of all time at that point. Which wild to think about. Actually, no, my bad. I'm looking at the wrong number. I'm looking at its weekend. It made $255 million its opening weekend, I think worldwide, possibly. I might be looking at the number wrong. Anyway, it basically made back its budget immediately in the first week. And now it's sitting at, in not even its third week, it's in like its second and a half week at this point. It's sitting at $1.45 billion that is made in the box office, which is wild to think about. This movie is just a juggernaut at this point for movies, and it is something that the theater industry really needed. It really needed this like super injection of people of a movie that people just want to go see. And yeah, there is a little bit of like some cynical things to look here for this movie as well, with the fact that will this send the wrong signal to Pixar and to Disney and Hollywood about don't try to do original movies anymore, just do sequel, do the proven things so they make money. Maybe, I mean possibly, but the other thing to compare it to is last year in 2023 when Pixar's Elemental came out. The thing that ruined Elemental was the marketing. The marketing for that movie was absolutely terrible, and having seen that movie now, I completely agree. The marketing for that movie was terrible. It made the movie look so bland, so generic, and just like a waste of time, and was focusing way too heavily on things that weren't important to the movie. But watching that movie, it's like a beautiful love story. It's like literally the most perfect romance movie that Pixar's ever made, and it's beautiful. And it made a lot of money. It made like $600 million, I think, overall by the end of its run, just because it just kept going. It was just in theaters, and it just kept going. They even like expanded the theater release for it a bit after like a month or so, because it just kept making money. So Pixar still should be making original movies, because their original movies, their original ideas are still great. And unfortunately, the data we have recently for those movies is very heavily skewed because of the pandemic and because theaters were closed. So the last the last six Pixar movies that came out were Inside Out 2, Elemental, Lightyear, Turning Red, Soul, and Luca. Of those six movies, four of them technically came out during the pandemic. Luca, Soul, and Turning Red all did in fact come out during the height of the pandemic, so they did not get theatrical releases until like last year or this year or whatever, for like a couple of weeks, and they didn't really make any money because no one marketed them. So you can't really count those as having budget or not having budget, about making any money or not, or about being successes or not, because they never released technically. They were just thrown on Disney Plus. People watched them if they wanted to, and they were just kind of forgotten about. All three of the movies, great movies as well. Soul is a little iffy for me personally, but I still love the messaging behind it. Luca, I love phenomenally. I love Luca so much. And Turning Red grew on me a lot, because I'm like, I understand this movie. I get what it's going for here. Turning Red's a great movie. Lightyear is the only one of the first four that technically released in theaters, technically, and it released like midway through the pandemic. So like theaters had been open at that point. They had started coming back, they started coming back open, and people started like actually seeing movies again in theaters. It wasn't as much. People started seeing movies in theaters. And the unfortunate thing about Lightyear is that it's not really that good, just in general, which is, unfortunately, I hate to say that, it's just not really that good. It had a budget also about $200 million, which feels wild to think about as well, but it also only made $218 million worldwide, almost $219 million worldwide, because no one really wanted to see it, and it was a weird movie. It was marketed weirdly. The whole idea of the movie was strange. Like, I'm okay with having an origin story movie of Buzz Lightyear, but we also already have that in Buzz Lightyear: A Star Command, the animated series back from like the 90s, that Disney just forgets about because I think they have to because of licensing and contract stuff. So like this movie, I don't really know who this movie was for, because was it for people who grew up with Toy Story? Because if it was, then they already watched Buzz Lightyear: A Star Command, and this is not that. Is it for a new audience? And it's like, if it is, then, well, they have the original Toy Stories to watch that are better. Is it for a whole new audience that just wants to see this weird, hyper-realistic Buzz Lightyear that's voiced by Chris Evans? I don't know. I don't exactly know. So Lightyear was a weird case for Pixar. But this one actually did get a theatrical release and didn't do well. So then it started having the rumors and started having the media share the idea that Pixar was dying. Pixar was dying. Disney killed Pixar. Disney Plus killed Pixar. Pixar shouldn't be making original movies anymore because they're not making money. What are they doing? And then Elemental comes out. It has a not good opening weekend. Because that's just what every studio cares about at this point, is just opening weekends, which is not a good metric to go off of at all. But it doesn't have that good of an opening weekend. Doesn't have that good of like initial numbers or anything. But then it just keeps going and just keeps going. It made $154 million by the end of its run domestically, which is not that bad. It's almost its production budget it made in domestically alone, so it almost made that. Then it made an extra $330 million internationally for a final total of $484, almost $485 million worldwide. I thought it did a little bit higher than that, but no, it was that. Didn't ever get or doesn't have the numbers on here for physical releases for like DVDs or whatever. I'm pretty sure there's a DVD somewhere for Elemental. There has to be, right? But whatever, doesn't matter. So it did make a profit. It did make 2.4 times its production budget, so technically made a profit. It technically topped its budget, topped its P&A, its marketing budget as well. So technically it did make a profit, but people didn't necessarily look at Elemental as being a success for Pixar, even though it was. But looking back on it, people are like, oh yeah, this was a success. So basically the whole narrative of Pixar up until Inside Out 2 was, is Pixar worth it anymore? Do people actually want to go see Pixar movies? Is there a market for Pixar movies anymore? Clearly there is. Clearly there still is a market for Pixar movies, given Inside Out 2's numbers. Clearly there is. And again, to go back to the original idea, the original topic, and the original question is like, will this send the wrong message to Disney and Pixar about how they should make their movies and what movies they should make? I hope not. I really hope not, and I don't necessarily think it will, but also I'm just optimistic about that, about those sort of things. I think more than anything, it will basically just show that if you create something that you're passionate about and you market it correctly, it'll have an audience. And that's an issue with all of Hollywood in general, where things just aren't marketed correctly. Like, there's just a lot of movies that are not marketed correctly. We've talked about this before. I talked about this last month with The Fall Guy, Furiosa, technically Planet of the Apes as well. They just aren't marketed correctly. They're just movies that are not marketed to the right audiences. So, basically, long story short there, as I'm going 20 minutes talking about Inside Out 2 and the numbers here, I love this movie. It's only been out like 13 days, and we're about to get on the 4th of July weekend by the time of this recording. So, like, if you're in the United States, you're going to have a long weekend, go see Inside Out 2. But also, we're going to be getting some more movies this weekend as well, like family movies, specifically of Despicable Me 4, which is going to be the first thing to actually really challenge its numbers. So, just go see the movies. Just go watch the movies with your family if you can afford it. Obviously, if you can afford it. If you can't, then don't worry about it. Obviously, do your own thing. But I love Inside Out 2. I thought it was a beautiful, perfect follow-up to the first movie. And clearly they're going to make a third one. Clearly they're going to make a third one out of how much money this one made. They're making a third one. And I'm really intrigued to see what story they tell in the third one. I have a couple ideas that are kind of fun ideas. I say fun because of what they would pertain to. I have a couple ideas that I think they could possibly go with for it. I'm not going to share them here because there's no need to. But I have a couple ideas for what they could possibly do for an Inside Out 3, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just interested to see what they're going to do with it and to see what they can do in the future. And in general, for Pixar in general, what they're going to be doing. I know their next movie is Elio, I think. Elio. The alien movie about the kid who gets abducted by aliens. So they have that one coming out. I don't know if it comes out this year or next year. I think it's next year. That one looks fun. And then whatever movies they have as well. I know they're going to be making a Toy Story 5, which they really shouldn't. They're going to make a Cars 4 at some point, just because Cars is remarkable as hell. They should be making an Incredibles 3 at some point, which actually I'm excited for because I like Incredibles. But I do hope they keep making original movies too, because the original movies are where the heart is for Pixar. But either way, so that's everything for Inside Out 2 to stop my rambling there. Inside Out 2 is great. Go watch it. Go watch the movie. It's great. But the other things I want to talk about in this episode of Minty Minutes, the next thing is I finished watching the latest season of Doctor Who because it finally finished uploading. All 8 episodes of it. Yay! Streaming's wonderful with how much content we get for a season of a show. If you couldn't tell, that was sarcasm. I hate the streaming model. I hate the streaming model that Netflix basically perpetuated from all streaming services. Hey, let's make a show, have 8 episodes, and then take 3 years to make another season. It's what took you so long to make this? It's bad. I don't know why. I don't know why it takes so long for these streaming services to make seasons of their shows. I don't know. I don't know why they do it. Before I actually get into the episode, just because they finished filming this season of Doctor Who in 2023 in October, I think October 2023, maybe 2022. I can't remember. But they finished filming it a while ago. They just had their last episode 3 weeks ago. What the hell? Why did it take that long? Anyway, to actually get on the review little thing of Doctor Who. I really enjoyed this season. I really enjoyed this season of Doctor Who. I really enjoyed Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th, I guess, Doctor, technically. Even though also the series kind of confirmed / retcon that the number system does not matter. It doesn't mean anything at all, which I'm okay with that too, but whatever. I loved Millie Gibson as Ruby, but ultimately, and this is not to be negative, this is just be critical because I love this series so much. And I've seen a lot of people also talk about this too, and a lot of Doctor Who fans mention this and bring this up as well, is they feel a bit disappointed in how the season ended, and I'm right there with them as well, because the whole season had been set up of this big mystery of who's Ruby's mother? And the show, and Russell T Davies as the showrunner, and how they were presenting things in the actual show itself, in the episodes themselves, were presenting it as that Ruby's mom was this big important cosmic entity, okay, this big important being. And this actually will be spoilers for Doctor Who. This actually will be spoilers because I kind of got to talk about it for the whole aspect of it. So there'll be a thing on screen, just jump ahead if you don't want to see spoilers for the episode. The big reveal of Ruby's mom is that she's nobody. She's literally an average person. We don't find out about her dad, but her mom's just an average, normal person who just had a kid way too young and gave her away. And that feels a bit disappointing. Not in the fact that Ruby's mom is ordinary. I'm okay with that. I am perfectly okay with that. It is the Rey storyline from Star Wars, from Force Awakens, Last Jedi. I'm not mentioning Rise of Skywalker because that movie does not exist. That's a joke. That's a joke. The movie exists. I know it does. But it's the whole idea that like Rey wasn't anybody special. She was just she's just a girl. She's just a person. Again, they got changed from Rise of Skywalker, but whatever. So that's the whole idea. And like, I'm okay with that idea. I'm okay with that story of Ruby just being a normal girl, and the reason why she's special is that she's ordinary. I'm okay with that. The problem then becomes that the show itself, the actual text of the show itself, this also goes to some media literacy thing as well, but the text of the show is telling us that Ruby's mom is somebody very, very important, very, very special. And then she's not. So then it feels like we've been lied to this entire season of like, well then why was everything important? Why were you all telling us this was so important? And then the way they explain some of the things in the last episode and in the finale are just so bad. Like, they're just so cheesy and badly explained. And pretty much like every fan I've seen, and that's a bit of a blanket statement, but pretty much every fan I've seen has had the same thoughts of like, that's a terrible explanation for why that was going on. You didn't know what was happening, did you? And that basically seemed like the overall idea is that probably Russell D. Davies wrote himself into a corner, wrote himself out of the corner by making just weird ass solutions to things that he didn't think about. And then once people started questioning him on it, he's like, oh, it's just this thing or this thing. And it's like, that's not an answer, dude. You didn't have an idea for this, did you? You didn't have an explanation for any of this. And that's fine. It happens. I understand. As a writer myself, as technically a writer myself, I need to publish my things. But as a writer, I understand. I get it. Sometimes you just write yourself into a corner and you don't know how to back yourself out of it. But it just goes to the whole thing of like, if you're gonna have this whole idea, don't bang us over the head with it, with a whole different idea for it, like a whole different pathway for it. Just go with it, and it's fine. And it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. Now, but overall, and again, that was just a critical thing. But overall, I enjoyed this season of Doctor Who. I thought it was a really fun season, taking out the mystery aspect of it. I thought the mystery aspect leading up to the final episode was really cool and really good. But I think overall the season itself was very fun. And it felt like a pretty good return, I would say, to Doctor Who. Because like on the channel, on the actual channel here, I've been rewatching New Who from 2005 onward, and it's been a really fun journey to rewatch those and to be like, yep, no, I still love this show. The show's still great. But I kind of fell off during the Jodie Whittaker season, and it sucked as well because like I really like Jodie Whittaker. I think she's great, and I think she was a great Doctor as well. It's just, wow, the writing on that season was like that whole series was really, really bad. So I'm excited to go back and rewatch it again just to see how bad it is compared. But it does feel like Doctor Who kind of got a bit of a return to form in a way. When it got the Disney money to be put on Disney Plus. And that's another thing. Let me just explain that real quick as well, because people have been getting confused. Disney is not producing Doctor Who. Disney does not own Doctor Who. It is still a product of the BBC, of the Russell D. Davies production company that he's doing it. It is just simply a streaming partner, and Disney is paying for it. So therefore, Doctor Who got a budget finally. Okay. It only took them 60 years, but they finally have a budget. They have a budget they can work with. And that was also one of the issues as well with the finale and with the whole season in general, is like, sometimes when you're given a budget, that's not necessarily the best thing, because sometimes you blow the budget on things that don't really matter, and you're like, well, yep, that's where the budget went. Yep, that's where the budget went right there. Giant CG thing is right there. That's the budget. And it's not the biggest issue. It's just one of those things where like, yep, that's a noticeable thing. It's like, yep, you got a budget now. And it's both good and bad. Like, it is both very much good and bad, depending on the episode and depending on what they do with the money. But yeah, so that I just want to explain that right now off the jump here. Disney does not own Doctor Who. It is still its own thing. Disney is just a streaming partner that paid for it. So they basically are giving money to BBC or whatever to, air Doctor Who. But anyway, beyond all that, this felt like a good return, but also felt like a strange thing to present to this like whole new audience on Disney Plus. as well, especially the first episode. The first episode of Space Babies was a very, very odd choice to have the first episode for the new American audience. It's easily the worst episode of the whole series. Not saying it's bad, it's just the worst one of the whole series. Also, I'm using the British term of series instead of season, even though this one's called technically season 1. I don't know. I don't know why they're naming them the way they are, but it doesn't matter. But Space Babies was easily the worst episode of this whole series. It was fine. It was okay. But then the rest of the series kind of gets better and better. There was a couple little stumbling points in there, a few things, just because of how some things were written or whatever. Personally, me was like 73 yards. 73 yards was one of those things as well. It was like, okay, the mystery was really cool until you tried to explain it, then the explanation makes no sense at all. So that kind of happens too. And that seemed like to be like a bit of a running theme through some of the episodes here of like, cool, you have a great mystery. Cool explanation, not good. Not good for it. But, you know, whatever, beyond all that, whatever. But the season was cool. The season was really cool. I'm really excited to see where it does go, though, and to see the continuing stories of Shudigatwa as the 15th Doctor and his companions. I know Ruby is coming back at some point in season 2. Series, whatever it is for Doctor Who in total. She's coming back at some point. But we are going to have a new companion that we technically were introduced to the actress in the episode Boom. So we're going to be getting a new companion, which is pretty cool. Like, new companions are always cool, but we are going to have Ruby back at some point, and there's more to tell for her story, and I am excited to see what they do for the rest of her story. But I just love Doctor Who. I really do, as you all can probably tell from the channel of me having gone back and rewatched it at this point. Doctor Who's fun. It is still a good show. It is a fun show. A little spooky at some points, but that's kind of the whole point. And it's still worth a watch. And it just had a bit of a disappointing stumbling at the end there. With just how things were explained, but that was kind of the fault of Russell T Davies for writing himself into a hole that he had to try and write himself out of, and then made the hole bigger somehow. But beyond all that, that's just Doctor Who in a nutshell. Sometimes that's just it in a nutshell. So that's my whole thing on Doctor Who. It was a good season. I will get to it eventually when I actually do the review spectrum on that in a few years. But we'll talk about that. And also, I will be starting the Mass Effect season at some point in the next couple of months or whatever for the review perspective and stuff like that. So keep the channel for more Doctor Who stuff, because I will be talking more about Doctor Who. And then the final thing I want to talk about is technically another thing on Disney Plus as well. Another thing, again, Disney does not own this. Disney just streamed this as well. That I have gotten really invested and really into the show Bluey. So this whole last month, I basically binged watched Bluey, all of it. All 3 seasons of it. I watched all of it on Disney Plus, and it started out as kind of a joke in a way. There's like a thing just to put on the background to be like while I'm doing other things, just have it on the background, listen to. And then I just started laughing at a lot of jokes in the show because they're really good jokes. And then I just started watching it and realized this is a good show. This is a really, really good show. And I had heard a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, say how good of a show Bluey is. And I thought they were being like a little bit ironic, just because I thought they were being ironic about it. No, they're being genuine. Bluey's a great show. It's a phenomenal show. Even outside of it being obviously a kid show, it's kind of also not. It's one of those perfect examples of a show that has a target audience, that has a target demographic of children, but it's written for the adults in the room to understand a lot of things more than the kids do. It teaches like morals and teaches like messages to the kids, and they're really good messages, they're really good morals. They're not like, oh, can you count to 3 now this time, little Jimmy? Can you count to 4? It's like, no, teaching the message like, hey, sometimes people are sad, and if they're sad, don't smother them. Just like give them some space and let them figure it out. And if they want you go to them. Or like sometimes bad things just happen, and just kind of gotta go with it. You just go with the flow or whatever. Or sometimes you can't always buy what you want to buy all the time. Sometimes you gotta share, and that's okay. And just like morals like that. But then you have the flip side of the show as well, where somehow they did a half-hour long episode, which doesn't sound like a lot compared to most shows, but when the episodes are like 7 minutes long normally, a half-hour long episode is a pretty big deal. But they did a half-hour long special at the end of season 3 where they basically tied together like 5 or 6 different subplots that had been throughout the first 3 seasons. And you don't even realize that there were subplots in this series until you see them all come together and like, wait a minute, that's right. They were talking about this like 4 different times throughout the season. Wow, okay. And it's a phenomenal episode teaching about how you can't necessarily always plan for the future, how you just have to kind of like take every day one step at a time, and you can't be like upset about certain things happening because you don't know what that's going to lead to. Like sometimes a bad thing actually leads to a really good thing, or sometimes a good thing leads to an unforeseen bad thing happening. And it's just basically like a whole moral thing of like, accept what's going on and then go from there, kind of an idea for that, which is a massive moral like thing to teach in a kids show that also adults can learn too, and it's wild. Also, the episode deals with a marriage, and one of the adults almost breaking off the marriage because they get really upset, and it's like, okay, this is a lot more serious and investing than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, Bluey is a great show, and like it's hard to explain just how good that show is. It's just good. It's just so good. And like I've even started getting recommended and watching videos on YouTube as well from people who are like actual content creators of like for Bluey, like, you know, people who do theory videos or do video essays on like the parental aspects or the therapeutic aspects of the show, or the mental health aspects of the show, or like the things they deal with in the show that are like completely correct to how you deal with them as a parent or whatever. There's some wild stuff in there, some absolutely wild like things in there that are just like so good. And it's a kid show, and it's great. And go watch Bluey. It's just pure. It's just a pure show. Just go watch Bluey. It's awesome. And it's also genuinely one of the funniest shows I've seen in a couple of years at this point. There is some legitimately great jokes in that show because they're just so natural. And it's like, yeah, that's just how people talk. It's pretty phenomenal. So go watch Bluey. And that's pretty much everything for this Minty Minutes. I was going to try to keep this under an hour today because there wasn't really many things to talk about in general. And I did make a community post the other day on Monday of the time of this recording. I did make a community post on Monday about the future of the channel for at least a little bit. And I'll just say it here as well for if you didn't see the post. So basically I'm going to be taking a bit of a hiatus from video creation for a couple months at least, maybe the rest of the summer. Just to kind of like recenter myself and like refocus myself and figure out what I'm doing in my life in general, because it's been a bit of a rough couple weeks and I just need to like recenter, refocus what I'm doing and figure out what I'm doing going forward. And the Minty Minutes will still happen. I'm still going to do one of these a month just because I have the schedule now, one a month. But in the meantime of the other videos not coming up, I am going to be working in the background on things. Like I'm going to actually get a bunch of hopefully a bunch of videos recorded, so I can just edit them as we go on later on. Start getting like actual series finished and planned out ahead of time. Start getting some videos planned out ahead of time, like actual longer form video essays as well. So I just basically want to like take a couple months, just like kind of take it to myself and figure out what I'm doing for the most part, and figure out like what I'm going to be doing going forward in both the content creation space and in life in general. So that's basically what the post was about. And there's some other things there too, so go ahead and find that post if you can, or I'll link it somewhere here as well, just so you can see what I'm talking about there. But beyond all that, I am still going to be around. I'm still going to be here. The Minty Minutes are going to come up once a month. Again, I had a main goal of trying to at least upload 12 of these things to basically say that I did this for a whole year, and I'm still planning on doing that. But yeah, I'm just going to be taking just a little bit of a break from video creation, video reactions, and all that stuff for a little bit, just to again recenter myself, refocus, and figure out what I'm going to be doing going forward. But beyond all that, I hope you all enjoy this episode of Minty Minutes and the little explanation of what I'm going to be doing going forward for a little bit. Hope you all enjoyed everything. Go watch Bluey, go see Inside Out 2, and watch Doctor Who, I guess, just because fun stuff. Nothing really else to say. Just hope you all are doing great. Hope you all are doing well. And yeah, if you want to see more from the channel, actually, first off, if you like the video, leave a like, helps out. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go and subscribe as well. It helps out as well, as we're on the pathway to 1,000. It's going to get a little stunted because of the hiatus here, but you know, whatever. And if you want to see more, on the screen is going to be some playlists for some videos you can watch, or things YouTube recommends for you as well. And until next time, just stay lovely, everyone. Stay awesome, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, peace, everyone. Peace.